How do I find a new job? How can I make a career change? And the biggest question of all, can I really find a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to be at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I get what companies are looking for when hiring top talent. What that means for you is an unmatched combination of insider knowledge and the best kept secrets about making heart-based career changes and navigating the ups and downs of job searching in today's world of work. Whether you're a recent graduate navigating the job market for the first time or a seasoned professional ready for a career change, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to be challenged and inspired to move beyond your self-doubt and take the right next steps towards landing a career you love. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy, and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Smith, and I'm thrilled to have you here for this compelling season dedicated to the inspiring stories featured in the book, Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Letting Go. Each week, we'll spotlight an extraordinary woman who shares her path of courage, resilience, and personal growth. These are stories that will move you, challenge you, and remind you of the transformative power of letting go. Today, I am honored to have Dr. Sue Borrego with us. Sue's story is incredible, and I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to get into the interview. Born in Detroit, Sue Borrego grew up downriver from the city in a working-class family of auto and steelworkers, bartenders, and grocery store clerks, and became an emancipated minor at age 16. No stranger to hard work, she took on her first job in elementary school, shining shoes, and worked her way through high school by shoveling snow and delivering newspapers, often in the freezing cold Michigan dawn. No one in Sue's family had attended college, and she assumed that high school would be the end of her educational journey as well. Thanks to the support, encouragement, and guidance of the community of teachers and friends surrounding her, Sue ended up going to college in Idaho. She boarded a plane for Idaho carrying a single Army duffel bag that held everything she owned. As a low-income student with no college experience to call on and no home address to put on her registration form, Sue didn't have an easy transition to campus life and was unaware of the resources and opportunities available to her. Even after graduating from college, Sue never really moved away from feeling like an outsider, even as she pursued and completed her doctorate in education. Sue is a seasoned higher education leader and advocate for equity, inclusion, and student success. With experiences as a university president, consultant, professor, and researcher, she has led institutions through extreme challenges like Flint's water crisis and spearheaded initiatives that drive institutional vitality. During the course of her career as an administrator, leader, speaker, and consultant, Sue has never forgotten her struggle to find a sense of belonging and recognition of her own value. Her experience is shared by many who have overcome significant barriers to follow their dreams and fulfill their potential. Sue, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So for those who haven't picked up the book yet, can you give us a sneak peek into your story in the book, Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Letting Go?
Sure. I was a university chancellor, which is a president, depends on which university you're at. And at the height of my chancellorship, I just had my fourth year positive review. My supervisor the next week, my boss said to me that he wasn't going to renew my contract. I had a 5-year contract. I had 4 years of excellent reviews and had just had my fourth. And at first I thought he was kidding. I had navigated the largest environmental disaster that the university and the city had ever been through, achieved every single goal that we set. I exceeded our fundraising goals, our recruitment goals. At any rate, I thought he was kidding, but I could see by his face that he wasn't. So I sat there for a minute and I said, can we talk about what this is about? And he just said, oh, there's no despair here. You have a tenured faculty position for life, and we'll talk at another point. And I got up and went to the parking garage and sat in my car and drove home, and I was devastated. And I curled up under the on the couch under a blanket for the weekend. I had a fifth year of that contract to fulfill. So I was public that whole fifth year with people knowing that I wasn't coming back for a second 5-year term. And the narrative was that I had stepped down. But anybody who knew me and knew my work doubted that. So yeah, I spent the next year working and coming home and curling up on the couch.
Oh my
And
goodness.
the emotional and physical and financial disasters were all what they were, but mostly it broke my heart.
Yeah. Wow. It's just especially being so sudden and after you had achieved so much. Did you ever get an
Right.
explanation as to what was happening?
Yeah. And here's the thing that we need to all learn. It would have been so much simpler to say an outgoing president hired me. He did not hire me. He wanted his own guy.
Oh,
So it
yeah.
didn't matter what I had achieved. He wanted his own guy. And that would have been a simpler story to tell. But I got stuck in thinking I needed to say that I had stepped down because it would be a stronger story for going forward.
Oh.
And so I probably spent longer than I needed to
Mhm.
not telling the full story. But how do you do that? I mean,
Right.
Jennifer, do you say I was let go, he didn't renew me? I mean, all of that emotion around that and shame, I think, just got in the way.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with it being such a surprise. I mean, he didn't even give you
Right.
anything to go off of. So let me ask you this. Then when you get let go and then have to proceed to work for another full year.
Yes.
Meanwhile, everybody
Yes.
knows that you're not going to be there after that year. Is that right? Is that what you're saying? So
Yes.
like publicly, that was the conversation. And then they kind of like guilted you into saying that you had stepped down, even though it was really just he wanted his person in there.
Yeah, that was the opportunity. I'll provide you the
Yeah.
opportunity to say that you stepped down. And
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
the public, I'm a good soldier. So I
Yes.
was professional. I did what I needed. The carving out was the carving out of me, right?
Right.
The deficit, the toll it took was on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how silent it gets, about how the people that you sit at the table with as colleagues are now committed to an institutional narrative that you're no longer a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Mr. Toad's wild ride. I had a year and then I needed to go back teaching as a tenured faculty member. And that kind of coincided with COVID. And I went back and taught, and I loved teaching. I loved the courses I was teaching and the content, and I had great colleagues and great students. But there was a new chancellor in town, and I spent a significant amount of time trying to be small and out of the way.
Ugh.
And then a year and a half in, he lost his job for an inappropriate relationship with a female employee. And I found out then that he had moved 3 other strong women out of his orbit. And the university offered me a buyout.
Oh, wow.
And I decided, a tenure job is a position for life. It
Yeah.
was terrifying, but I decided I wanted to go someplace where my skills would be valued again and I could make a contribution without trying to stay out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting because healing doesn't happen all at once.
Mm-mm.
And I think that was a step to
Mm-hmm.
to regaining some sense of myself to feel strongly enough to leave and move back home to California.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say that I didn't still feel the kind of the cycles of shame and guilt
Right.
And then I was at a conference with some colleagues, and we were sitting at the table talking, and I said out loud, and these were, I should say this. So I was also part of a national organization, a women's organization supporting women professionally. I got a call from them at the same time, not renewing my board position because I was, according to their sense of things, I was disconnected. Well, yeah, I was on a couch under a blanket eating ice cream, watching
Oh,
lake freeze and the days get grayer and grayer and my life gets silenter and more silent and smaller. And so I was back at a conference with some of these women, and we were talking about supporting women in professionally. And I said, so let me tell you guys, I was not renewed. And there was dead silence. I said, I was not renewed at the same time you didn't renew me on the board here.
Wow.
And nobody picked up the phone and called. And they were shocked that I had been silent about it,
Right.
shocked that I had lived a year and a half in that kind of alone space.
Aw.
And it was silent. And then people started to talk, and another woman said, that happened to me.
Oh.
Somebody else said that their boss had been allowed to step down, So as we started to talk, I was reminded that this is a story that is not unusual.
Right.
In my 30s, when somebody lost their job, I wondered what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And in my 40s, when somebody lost their job, I started to give them a call and say, hey, how are you? Because what I now realized is I lived in a world where people could just non-renew you no matter what.
Right.
In my 50s, I began to realize if you'd done a really good job, there was a chance you'd be let go. And in my 60s, it happened to me. Right. And so that was the first time I said something. And then, I'm a survivor, man. I kept things, I didn't want people to know. I didn't know what they would think of me. I didn't know if I'd work again. I didn't want to be pathetic to anyone. And then I was watching the Democratic National Convention when Hillary Clinton took the stage, and the crowd went crazy. And I have probably over-identified with the public beating that she's gotten through the course of her life. She's been, and the situation for me was much smaller, and there wasn't that kind of public
still,
denouncement. But I just thought of the pain of being really good at what you did. She was, regardless of your politics,
right.
She was more skilled than anyone when she lost the presidency. She was beat up for standing by her husband. She was beat up if she didn't stand by her husband. So she walks out on the stage at the Democratic National Convention. The crowd goes crazy. I thought in that moment, Hillary's going to be okay. And so am I.
Yeah.
And so that aligned with this chapter. And I'm like, I am not writing about this. But as that happened, I began to write about what it was like to see her really stay committed to a life of meaning and purpose and a commitment to her contribution in the world. Yeah. And that probably fueled, I even think the first draft of this chapter wasn't as deep as the second and third draft. I've kind of wrote my way into, as I turned it in, I thought, wow, why did I worry so much about that?
It evolved over time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the healing process for sure.
And I think it's important that, we talk about narratives.
Yes.
There's a narrative. Anytime somebody steps away, loses a job, I want to be in control of the narrative about me. So I just kept thinking about the fact that I control that narrative.
Yeah.
And what's also true is you can be a casualty in an organization. Yeah. And that might not be about you at all.
Right.
But it impacts you.
Right? Absolutely. And tell me if this resonates with you. What I've learned through the years as well is that you get the rug pulled out from under you, quite literally, and that happens, at work and this professional organization at the same time. But in my experience, that's clearing the path for something bigger and better and maybe more aligned to you and what you were supposed to be doing. And maybe you didn't realize it, obviously, at the time. But my guess is that it led to something more significant or more meaningful. And it might not have happened overnight, but what did you do after that? Tell me what was next.
Well, so I kept putting one foot in front of the other. I got back to California and I was consulting, and then I got a call asking if I'd be the interim president at California State University Stanislaus for the year. And it was a great opportunity. It was a fun campus to be on. Really, my job there was being present and nurturing hope with a group of colleagues who had done really good work. And, when there are presidential transitions, a lot of times people's work gets missed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had great connections in the community. And what I knew when I got up there, even, I am the best leader I've ever been in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so much less stressed out about it than I've ever been in my life. And I'm so clear that your pivot foot grounded in core values and the mission of whatever institution you're working with is what's important.
Yes.
Leadership dresses itself in all different kinds of ways.
Yes.
But, for me, being present means I'm clear about what my core values are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm clear that the people I work with are my partners in the work.
Mm-hmm.
And my presence of listening, supporting, understanding, not understanding, but asking questions, right? Those are the things that are harder to teach somebody than Bowman and Deal's leadership theory.
This is true.
Or competence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're mission centric, if you understand the mission and are committed to the mission, you marry those two things. So I come at this 8 years down the road, and today I am the deputy city manager in the city of Turlock, which no one ever, it wasn't even in the stratosphere.
Yes.
And this is a group of people I met when I came to Turlock. I was the president, but I worked with people in the city. Yeah. And, I don't think a city job is a whole lot different than a university job. My work here is still around being present, nurturing hope, working with relationships.
Yeah.
So
I love this career story.
If you can breathe and take care of yourself and keep till you get your feet again, mm-hmm. you got to have people who help you tone out the noise. Mm-hmm. There's a line out of Les Miserables, and the lions come at night with their voices soft as thunder, and they tear your hope apart and they turn your dreams to shame. That's what can happen in these kinds of situations, right? So the emotional part, I did all the wrong things, man. I separated myself from people and I went quiet, and it was, my grandkids call and say, Nana, do you need a buddy today? The 4-year-old who wanted me to take him to lunch and take him to, buy toys for his brother. Or they came over to the lake and we would go looking for crayfish or go fishing and it's hard to be hiding under a blanket eating ice cream.
When you're going to go catch crayfish.
With 8, 10, 4, and 2-year-olds around you.
Oh, God bless the little ones for helping you get out from under that blanket, for sure, because clearly there were things for you that you needed to do. And one of the things that really stood out that you said was staying clear about your core values and staying true to who you were, even when you have the rug pulled out from underneath you. And knowing that this is an opportunity. Okay, I'm going to move back to California. Now I'm going to control this narrative. Now I see others like a Hillary Clinton and see what her story has done for me and how I can do that for others as well. And look at you being able to share this story in a book and a podcast and be able to be that expander for other people that might be going through something similar. Because let's face it, job loss in today's world it's out there. So there's a lot of bad leadership decisions, just like what you went through, and someone that clearly didn't value women in leadership, it sounded like.
Well, and I think what the book did was reminded me that these stories aren't unusual,
Right.
and that nobody can do it alone.
Right.
That's what I hope this chapter does and this book does for individuals, is those that took a kick to the gut don't linger as long as I did,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in self-doubt and self-shame and what am I going to do and who am I? And, a number of us of a certain age came up before Brene Brown started talking about vulnerability, right?
Right.
And we be vulnerable. Everything was, oh, get a thick skin, don't show tears, don't be vulnerable. That's not gone for women.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that work is really solid work, but I think we're just learning, many of us, how to take those steps and take a breath, because I don't think it's safe still really for people to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And yet, authenticity, you cannot be authentic if you can't be vulnerable,
This is true.
right?
This is
Think
true.
about
Yeah.
those. We set this up. We want you to be authentic, but don't be vulnerable. Ultimately allows you to move forward and to be a good colleague to others. I'm a better champion for others today if I'm willing to tell my truth.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I have an image of, and I know we're not on video here, but I have an image of just like reaching out and guiding somebody along. Like that's really what this is about. It's reaching out and like helping to guide somebody, not literally, but with your words in the chapter and, in this conversation. That's really what you're doing by being vulnerable and sharing this story.
it's like being at the crossroads, right? With one hand reaching out and one hand reaching to the future.
I
And
love that. Yeah.
my daughter would say to me when I was kind of broken about this and say, I just want to keep making meaningful contributions. She was the one who said, you make meaningful contributions every day.
Yeah.
That's not just
Work.
but 50 years of working, my contributions in my mind were about what I did at work.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got a 4-year-old grandkid who calls me and says, Nana, do you need a buddy today? Right?
Right.
That's a priceless moment.
Yeah.
Um,
And guess what? You had the time and space to do that. Right? I mean, that's a beautiful moment. I could see the phone call and having the time and space to be, yeah, let's go. Let's go have ice cream and catch crawfish today. And what a memory that is. And the little one didn't even know how much they were helping. So I think that's a beautiful piece of the story for sure. Now, let me ask you this. So, what inspired you to share this story with the Brave Women at Work community?
Brave Women, the community had reached out to me, and I was just, nervous, like probably every author is, about what am I. Really was that moment of watching Hillary Clinton put her hand to her heart and that
Yeah.
crowd recognize her, and me reflecting on the life that she continued to live,
Mm,
purpose. And that was what pushed this to be the story for me,
yeah.
because my life to be about meaning and purpose. It is about meaning and purpose. And this was almost like a roadblock.
Yeah.
You're building a road along the ocean. They had to blast pathways,
Right.
right? In order to that road that allows you to drive 300 feet above the most beautiful vision you'll ever see in your life.
Right.
Well, I passed the mudslide, right? To see the next beautiful vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love like the visual of that because we got to go through the mud to get to the view a lot of times. That's really what it takes. And I think, people like you that are willing to share stories like this will help other people recognize when they're in the mud, when they're trying to like wipe off the windshield. I get this picture of like a windshield and all this mud all over it and the mudslides and going through that it will be okay on the other side. And, and then when you look back, and I always say hindsight is 2020, but you look back and it almost gets to a point where you're grateful for what you went through to be able to share the story and how it shaped you and your core values and what being present in a leadership role for a city versus a school means to you today and the responsibilities that go along with that. So, yeah.
What Jennifer is that road is there. Whether I can see it or not on the other side of the mudslide.
This is true. Yeah.
That road is
yes.
Right. I always say, if you asked me, I wouldn't have written the story like it unfolded, right. But that it happened, I wouldn't change it today because so much of who I am is shaped by all the experiences in my life.
I really appreciate your vulnerability and being able to kind of work through this chapter and being willing to share it here. Now, I want to switch gears for a second here because you've been in high pressure leadership situations and a lot of folks listening are in leadership situations. And the specific one that you have mentioned that jumped out at me was the Flint water crisis. And you had mentioned that earlier. And so tell me, like, how do you lead through a situation like that?
The issue was that there was too much chemicals being released into the water system in Flint, and it began to corrode the lead off the pipes, which went into the water and began to poison children is where we saw it first, where the doctors saw it. But that becomes that was a huge community crisis.
Yeah.
And being a university, we were right downtown. There are whole weeks I didn't remember what had gone on that week because you had federal authorities and state authorities and local authorities and, how are we going to have water on campus? What were people in the community going to drink? So it was a 24/7 kind of experience. It also was an environmental crisis that had its roots in huge organizational racism, right? This wouldn't have happened in a community that had less underrepresented, that had more money, so it had that whole piece layered into it. And there were some things where I actually I woke up one day we had a Legionella outbreak in a residence hall, Legionella positive test in a residence hall. And I was going to do a press conference and my media folks didn't want me to because the CDC doesn't notify at the time of Legionella unless it was at a children's center, a hospital, or a senior center. And mine was in a residence hall. And I decided I was going to let people know what we know because I believe at the end of the day, you have to tell the truth, stand in the truth, do whatever you need to do to fix it, and then move forward, right? I didn't want a student who may have had a compromised immune system to be at risk. So we held the press conference. I said, we had the test. If you wanted to break your contract, we would help you move out. We wouldn't hold you to your contract. We knew water was going in at 120 degrees and coming out at 120 degrees is what we needed. Long and short of it, at the end of the day, we had 3 students with compromised immune systems who moved out of the residence halls. Nobody was adversely impacted.
Oh, good.
Students said that we had been honest with them from the get-go and they knew we would be. So sometimes I think in those real moments of crisis, you got to go back again. I don't mean to sound redundant, but to the core values.
Yeah.
Doing what is right, treating people with dignity and respect, living in the world and making it a better place, right? So if that drives you, that isn't always going to be comfortable. That isn't always going to be what people want. I'm sure I'm not everybody's cup of tea as a leader, but what you know of me is what you see is what you get, and I will be honest. And so I think in those tough decisions, you have to be conscious that there'll be a cost sometimes. You have to breathe and try to, in the midst of the noise, stay focused again on what the mission is and what the values are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's like this transparency during crisis while you're making those decisions, and just to be in that, to be grounded enough, I guess, in who you are, in your values and everything else, to be able to do that is a really big deal. And in service of the folks in the residence hall or in the community, or whichever one you're serving. And so it made me think too, just to go back to something you were saying earlier, in your story in the chapter around silence and not being silent in a situation like this, where maybe the PR team wanted you to be silent, but you disagreed and stayed true to yourself and stayed true to your values. Let go. Speaking of letting go of what that guidance was, because it wasn't part of you and your leadership, and everybody was better for it. So yeah, it does. It goes back to those core values, and you're not repeating yourself. I talk about core values every single day at my job. So it ties exactly and beautifully into my work. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's a really big story. And this went on for, how long did it go on for? Was it a couple years?
Some would say that it's still going on, but
okay, yeah.
the of it was the rest of my presidency.
Okay.
As we, our students, our nursing students did blood testing of children throughout the city.
Okay.
Our GI worked to help identify where lead pipes were. So, and because we were downtown, I was part of the mayor's team and part of the businesses in the city, all trying to develop what I would say was a parallel narrative.
Right.
You can't, too many times we try to counter a bad story. You can't counter a story. It doesn't matter if it's one child with lead poisoning or 150. There is no only,
No.
right? That, it's a horrible story.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have a university that's open and businesses that are open. What do we do to protect the public?
Right.
And have those stories go parallel without discounting anything in that tragedy.
Yeah, that is a major crisis to work through. And the community there was, in my opinion, was very lucky to have your leadership. And Sue, you have a TED Talk that we were talking about earlier, and it's a very touching TED Talk. And I know some of your work is around differences, and you had touched on racism with the Flint water crisis, and maybe even a little bit of kind of women at work. There's a piece of that in your story as well, and maybe not being as held in high regard as a man at work. And so there's some underlying themes here. And I would love for you, if you're open to it, just to share a little bit about your TED Talk, and maybe a little bit about kind of what drove you to get up on stage and talk about it.
I think one of the things that's been really consistent in my life is coming into environments, wanting to create space for people in the environment. That may come from my own, when you're an emancipated minor and, people put you into the juvenile delinquent category, and I wasn't a juvenile delinquent. I asked the police once why my parents weren't parental delinquents, right? So that sense of being an outsider, and I was an outsider because I didn't have a home, and I was an outsider because in some places because I was a girl or because I was a woman. And, so understanding that, or the depth of that kind of carving, probably early helped me realize that many, many of our environments aren't as open and inclusive as we think they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I also learned that I have a role in that, right? I'm at the table because of how I look, because of my race. Some places I am square up at the table, even though in others I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when I'm at the table, how do I work to create more space
Mm-hmm.
so that others who might not have the same opportunities are also I'm creating or broadening opportunity, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
probably what drove me. And then I had done some work on privilege when I was teaching at USC, and one of the people there had invited me to do this TED Talk. And I think one of the examples that struck me was I have my granddaughter at the time is mixed race beauty, 3 years old. She wanted her mother to blow dry her hair straight to see how long it was. And she came out of the bathroom and she shook her head like princesses do and said to me, Nana, look, I'm a princess. Oh, it just struck me to the core that by 3, she already thought that long, straight hair that blew behind her was princess hair. And her curly, natural, beautiful hair wasn't princess hair. Imagine living in a place that you know that by 3.
3.
And I'm like, get her hair wet. Curl that hair back up. And I'm haunted by how our narratives shape what we see and who we see and how we see. And those narratives are the ones we can work on every day. I mean, it stops you straight up when you have a child that little who thinks already that a princess looks some way that she doesn't look like, right? For me, it was just another affirmation of the personal work it takes for me to do to be effective at creating space. You know, when I was in Michigan, I got close to a number of young women who were Muslim. And when they talked to me at lunch about what it was like to live in the same town I lived in with hijabs and what got said to them every day, what risk they were at every day. If you put yourself in those situations and can let go of your defensiveness and keep your commitment to wanting to be present and creating more space, that's the part of the narrative we get to keep picking away at. I'm really with what's going on about taking history out of public schools, taking books out of public schools, because my granddaughter is somebody who wouldn't see herself in
Right.
Pot and Puff. And, you know, the books that came, the last up until the last 20 years. And now as we remove those images, it makes people who look like me see mirror images and makes it harder for me to unpack my own narrative. Right.
Right. Yeah. There's so much here. First of all, listeners, I'm going to add I'm going to add Sue's TED Talk to the notes because everyone should listen to it. It's very touching, especially the story about your little one. And to me, that's like the unconscious messages that our society is sending. And then the other thing that comes up for me as you share this, the letting go of the defensiveness, the being present, the creating the space. But at the end of the day, isn't it about love and humanity? Like, it's about humanity and it's about love and it's about loving each other no matter what and being.
Because talking about love is one of the other things I said I wouldn't do. And you are so right that at the end of the day, and now you're starting to hear professional football coaches talk about this team loves each other.
Yes,
right?
Our Buffalo Bills.
30 years ago, 20 years ago, women are told not to talk about love. And if I get up talking about love at work, and Dan Campbell, the coach of the wonderful Detroit Lions, gets up and starts talking about love of the football team, his is okay.
Yeah.
And at the end, having your pivot foot in love
Yeah.
and practicing being present and what skills it takes to be able to walk in the world in love, because it doesn't happen automatically, right?
Mm-mm.
I have to constantly be mining my own kind of skill set and consciousness to be able to stay in that place of love. But you're
It,
exactly right.
it's so hard to do because of everything that we're living in. And I have a Post-it note right here on my desk. It says rooted in love. Like everything is rooted in love. And that's really true. And, again, whether the professional football players are talking about it or not, it's really true. It's really what it comes down to. And so, we're both certainly on the same page with that. And that 4-letter word needs to be used more often in work, in school, and on the football field, in all the places. I couldn't agree with you. I have like goosebumps all over the place. So thank you for kind of bringing that to the forefront. And listeners, that wasn't intended to be part of this conversation, but I absolutely love that it is. So, Sue, as we wrap up, what guidance would you like to leave listeners with, especially those that are navigating their own stories of letting go and stepping into bravery?
I would say breathe, find the people that you can lean on, and take the risk the first time to lean on one of them because it'll get easier. And know that on the other side of that mudslide, the road is still there.
Yes, it is. And it's usually a very beautiful view. So once you get there. So Sue, this has been such a fabulous discussion. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to add your TED Talk, if that's okay, to the show notes. But where else can folks connect with you?
They could find me at suborrego@gmail.com, and they can look for my website just at Susan Borrego.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we have those links as well. Oh, good. Okay, good. We'll have you connected on LinkedIn as well. So listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope the stories in this series serve as a powerful reminder that careers are rarely easy or linear. And it's the courage to let go and embrace the unknown that shapes our paths. Every career story has the potential to inspire and connect us in the most unexpected and meaningful ways. And I'm certain that Sue's story and her leadership has inspired you. And I know if you don't already have the book, you will love the book. So be sure to grab your copy of Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Letting Go on Amazon. And you'll be supporting Sue and myself and all the women who contributed. And then don't forget to tune in to next week's episode where we'll hear from another amazing woman sharing her story of courage and resilience. We'll talk to you next time.